Human Janitor saved a dragon hatchling from drowning. 2 months later, something shocking happened. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The maintenance corridors of Galactic Central Station hummed with the steady drone of machinery, a sound that had become as familiar to Tyler Grant as his own heartbeat. Deep in the bowels of the sprawling interspecies hub, where few beings ever ventured, the human janitor methodically pushed his cleaning cart through the dimly lit passage, his footsteps echoing against metal walls. Tyler had been stationed at GCS for 3 standard years now, ever since Earth had been grudgingly accepted into the Galactic Confederation. Humans were still viewed as primitives by most alien species, their relatively young civilization and lack of natural abilities making them ideal candidates for menial labor positions. It wasn't glamorous work, but Tyler took pride in doing his job well, even if no one noticed. Maintenance Level 6, Section 23 clear. He reported into his wrist communicator. The device beeped in acknowledgement, and Tyler moved on to the next section. These lower levels housed the station's complex water recycling system, a labyrinth of pipes and filtration tanks that processed waste from over 200 different species. It was vital infrastructure, though most of the diplomats and merchants who frequented the upper levels had no idea it existed. As Tyler rounded the corner, his attention was caught by an unusual sound, a high-pitched, frantic splashing that stood out against the normal mechanical hum. He frowned, following the noise to one of the smaller filtration tanks. The tanks weren't meant to be open, but this one had a maintenance hatch that had clearly been left ajar by someone. "Hello," Tyler called out, approaching cautiously. The splashing grew more desperate. "Is someone there?" Peering into the tank, Tyler's eyes widened at the sight of a small creature thrashing wildly in the water. At first glance, it looked like some kind of lizard, no bigger than a house cat, with iridescent blue-green scales that caught the light. But as it twisted in panic, Tyler realized what he was looking at, a dragon hatchling. Not the mythological creatures from Earth's legends, but a member of the Draconis species, one of the most powerful and feared races in the galaxy. The young Draconis was clearly in distress, its small wings too waterlogged to help it stay afloat, its head barely breaking the surface as it fought against exhaustion. Without hesitation, Tyler dropped to his knees and plunged his arms into the icy water. The hatchling hissed and snapped weakly as he wrapped his hands around its slippery body, carefully lifting it out of the tank. It was heavier than it looked, its dense musculature and developing wing structures giving it considerable weight despite its small size. "Easy there, little one," Tyler murmured, cradling the shivering creature against his chest. The hatchling made a pitiful chirping sound, its large, multifaceted eyes blinking up at him, pupils dilated with fear. "I've got you now. You're safe." Tyler knew he should report this immediately. The Draconis were an ancient, powerful species that held several seats on the Galactic Council. They were known for their intelligence, longevity, and formidable abilities, which included energy manipulation, telepathy, and in fully mature specimens, the ability to breathe plasma. They were also notoriously protective of their young, which were rarely seen outside their heavily guarded home worlds. How a hatchling had ended up alone in a maintenance-level filtration tank was a mystery, and potentially a diplomatic incident waiting to happen. But Tyler's first priority was the creature's health. It was trembling violently, its normally bright scales dulled with stress, tiny claws digging into the fabric of his uniform as it sought warmth. Tyler quickly wrapped the hatchling in his maintenance jacket and hurried back to his small quarters. As a human, he was assigned one of the smallest living spaces on the station, barely more than a closet with a cot, storage unit, and basic hygiene facilities. But it was private, which was what he needed right now. Once inside, Tyler gently placed the bundled hatchling on his cot and retrieved his first aid kit. He wasn't trained in xenobiology, but he'd picked up a few things during his time on the station. The Draconis were reptilian in appearance, but were warm-blooded and required higher temperatures than humans. Their metabolism was incredibly efficient, allowing them to go long periods without food, but when growing, they needed regular, protein-rich meals. "You're probably freezing, aren't you?" Tyler muttered, adjusting the room's temperature controls to their maximum setting. The station's life support system would flag the unusual heat signature, but maintenance quarters were low priority for monitoring. And hungry too, I bet. The hatchling had stopped trembling, but was watching Tyler's every move with wary intelligence. Draconis hatchlings were known to be precocious, capable of understanding complex concepts long before they could speak. This one seemed to be assessing whether Tyler was a threat. "I'm not going to hurt you," Tyler said softly, reaching slowly into his storage unit and pulling out his meal pack. "I'm going to help you get back to your family. But first, let's get some food into you." The meal pack contained a synthesized protein cube designed to approximate Earth beef, along with a nutrient supplement that tasted vaguely of vegetables. It wasn't gourmet cuisine, but it would provide the basic nutrients the hatchling needed. Tyler broke off a small piece of the protein cube and held it out. The hatchling sniffed cautiously, then in a lightning-quick movement, snatched the food from Tyler's fingers and swallowed it whole. Its eyes widened slightly, and it made a soft, trilling sound that Tyler interpreted as satisfaction. "Good, huh?" Tyler smiled, breaking off another piece. "Not exactly five-star dining, but it'll keep you going until we can find your parents." As the hatchling ate, Tyler assessed its condition more carefully. It didn't appear to be injured, just exhausted from its ordeal in the water. Its wings, delicate membranes stretched over a framework of hollow bones, were starting to dry out, regaining some of their translucent luster. The scales along its back and tail were a deep blue that shifted to emerald green on its belly, markings that Tyler recognized as belonging to one of the noble Draconis lineages. Which meant this wasn't just any hatchling. It was likely the offspring of someone very important. Tyler pulled out his personal data pad and searched for information about any Draconis diplomats currently stationed on GCS. There were 3 listed, all high-ranking council members. One of them, Ambassador Veritax, was noted as having recently returned from a breeding cycle on the Draconis homeworld. "Bet you belong to the ambassador," Tyler said, glancing at the hatchling, which was now curled contentedly on his cot, its belly distended from the meal. "But how did you end up in that tank?" "The Draconis quarters are 15 levels up from maintenance." The hatchling blinked slowly, its inner eyelids sliding sideways across its eyes in what Tyler knew was a sign of trust among the Draconis. It made a soft rumbling sound, almost like a purr, and stretched one small wing toward him. Tyler hesitated, then gently stroked the membrane with one finger. The hatchling trilled again, louder this time, a sound of pure contentment. "You're welcome," Tyler said, smiling despite himself. "But we can't keep this up. I need to get you back where you belong before someone notices you're missing and starts tearing the station apart." The logical thing would be to contact station security immediately. But Tyler knew how bureaucracy worked on the station. If he reported finding a Draconis hatchling, he'd be detained for questioning, possibly even accused of kidnapping. Humans weren't trusted, especially not with something as precious as a noble's offspring. No, the safest approach would be to return the hatchling directly to the ambassador's quarters, avoiding official channels altogether. It was risky. The Draconis living areas were heavily restricted, and being caught there without authorization could mean immediate expulsion from the station, or worse. But the alternative could mean a diplomatic incident that might reflect poorly on all humans. Tyler checked the time. It was late in the station's artificial night cycle, which meant minimal security in the corridors. If he was going to do this, now was the time. "All right, little one," Tyler said, carefully picking up the hatchling, which had begun to doze. "Let's get you home." The hatchling stirred but didn't protest, allowing itself to be wrapped once more in Tyler's jacket. Its trust warmed something in Tyler's chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. Tyler had learned to move unseen through the station during his years as a janitor. Maintenance staff were supposed to be invisible, after all. He knew which corridors were monitored by security cameras and which weren't, which elevators were least likely to be used during night cycle, and how to adjust his clearance badge to give him temporary access to areas that would normally be restricted. It wasn't exactly legal, but sometimes it was the only way to get maintenance work done efficiently, bypassing the endless authorization requests and security checks that would otherwise slow him down. Tonight, those same skills would help him return the hatchling without incident. The journey to the diplomatic quarter was tense, but uneventful. Tyler kept to service corridors and maintenance shafts where possible, the hatchling a warm, comforting weight against his chest. Twice he had to duck into alcoves to avoid security patrols, and once he pretended to be checking an environmental control panel when a late-night diplomat passed by, too absorbed in a datapad to give the human maintenance worker more than a passing glance. The Draconis quarters were located in the most prestigious section of the diplomatic quarter, their entrance marked by ornate doors engraved with the ancient symbols of their homeworld. Two security drones hovered silently on either side, their sensors sweeping the corridor at regular intervals. Tyler waited for the pattern, then slipped forward during a brief gap in coverage. He couldn't get through the main doors. Those would require DNA recognition, but there was a maintenance access panel nearby that he could use. The panel led to a small service corridor that ran behind the ambassador's quarters. It was used for delivering supplies and removing waste without disturbing the occupants. Tyler had been there once before, fixing an air recycling unit. As he navigated the narrow passage, the hatchling began to stir more actively, its head lifting from his chest, nostrils flaring as it caught familiar scents. It made a series of excited chirps that Tyler hurriedly tried to muffle. "Shoo, we're almost there," he whispered. "But we need to be quiet." At the end of the service corridor was another panel that would open into what Tyler recalled was a storage area within the ambassador's quarters. He hesitated, listening for any sound from beyond. Hearing nothing, he carefully unsealed the panel and peered through. The room beyond was dark but warm, filled with the rich, spicy scent that Tyler associated with the Draconis. It appeared to be a nursery of sorts, with a large, basin-like structure in the center filled with what looked like heated sand. Around the edges of the room were various objects that might have been toys or learning devices, their purpose unclear to human eyes. Tyler stepped through, the hatchling now wriggling eagerly in his arms. As soon as they entered, soft ambient lighting activated, responding to movement. Tyler froze, expecting an alarm, but none came. "This must be your room," he whispered to the hatchling, which was now making increasingly insistent noises. "Let's get you settled, and then I'll be on my way." He approached the sand basin, which radiated pleasant heat. This had to be the hatchling's bed. He gently unwrapped the creature and placed it on the sand, where it immediately burrowed in with obvious pleasure, sending up small puffs of the fine-grained material. Tyler smiled, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. "There you go, safe and sound." But as he turned to leave, the ambient light suddenly intensified, and a deep, resonant voice spoke from the doorway. "Remain where you are, human." Tyler's heart lurched into his throat as he slowly turned to face Ambassador Veritax. The adult Draconis was imposing, standing nearly 7 feet tall, with scales that gleamed like polished metal and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. Unlike the hatchlings, the ambassador's wings were fully developed, currently folded against his back, but still impressive in their span. He wore the formal robes of his station, emblazoned with the insignia of his lineage. "Ambassador," Tyler said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I can explain." "I sincerely hope so," Veritax replied, his tone dangerously calm. "You have exactly 1 minute to tell me why I shouldn't have you ejected from the nearest airlock for trespassing in my private quarters." Before Tyler could respond, the hatchling chirped loudly and scrambled out of the sand basin. It scurried across the floor and up the ambassador's robes with surprising agility, perching on his shoulder and making a series of animated sounds directly into his ear. Veritax's expression, normally inscrutable to human eyes, registered clear surprise. His gaze shifted from the hatchling to Tyler, multifaceted eyes narrowing slightly. "My offspring says you rescued it from drowning," the ambassador said, his voice losing some of its edge. "Is this true?" Tyler nodded, relief flooding through him. "Yes, Ambassador. I found the hatchling in a filtration tank in maintenance level 6, about 2 hours ago. I couldn't tell how long it had been there, but it was struggling. I pulled it out, made sure it was all right, fed it a little, then brought it here." "And you did not report this to security because—" Tyler swallowed. "I was concerned about how it would be perceived, sir. Humans aren't always trusted, especially with something so important. I thought the safest thing for the hatchling was to bring it directly back to you, without involving others who might, misinterpret the situation. Veritax was silent for a long moment, during which the hatchling continued to make soft chirping sounds, occasionally bumping its head against the ambassador's jaw in what seemed like an affectionate gesture. Finally, the ambassador spoke. "You showed both courage and discretion, human, qualities that are rare in combination." He lifted one clawed hand to gently stroke the hatchling's head. "My offspring says you were kind, that you spoke to it with respect and provided comfort and sustenance." "It was the right thing to do," Tyler said simply. "Indeed." Veritax's gaze seemed to pierce through Tyler, assessing him in some fundamental way. "What is your designation, human?" "Tyler Grant, sir. Maintenance crew, level 6 through 8, third shift." "Tyler Grant," the ambassador repeated, the human name sounding strange in his resonant voice. "I will remember that name." He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that, coming from a draconis of his rank, was an extraordinary honor. "You have my gratitude. Few would have acted as you did." "Thank you, Ambassador," Tyler replied, not entirely sure what else to say. "I should return to my post now, if that's all right." "Yes," Veritax agreed, "though not through the maintenance passages. You may use the main corridor. I will instruct security to allow you passage this once." Tyler nodded gratefully and turned to leave. As he reached the doorway, he glanced back one last time. The hatchling was watching him, its small head cocked to one side, multifaceted eyes gleaming in the ambient light. Tyler raised a hand in farewell. "Stay out of filtration tanks, little one." The hatchling trilled softly, a sound that somehow conveyed both gratitude and promise, before the door slid closed between them. Tyler returned to his quarters that night with an odd sense of emptiness. The brief time with the hatchling had been strangely fulfilling, awakening a nurturing instinct he hadn't known he possessed. He missed the warm weight against his chest, the trilling sounds of contentment, even the sharp little claws that had clung to his uniform. But that was that. A bizarre interlude in his otherwise routine existence, already fading like a dream. By morning, as he reported for his shift, the events of the previous night seemed almost unreal. "Grant," barked his supervisor, a stern Rigelian with 4 arms and a perpetual scowl. "You're reassigned. Level 3, Diplomatic Quarter." Tyler blinked in surprise. Level 3 was several steps up from his usual assignment, both literally and in terms of prestige. The Diplomatic Quarter was where the most important visitors to the station resided. Maintenance staff assigned there were usually the most experienced and trusted. "Sir, may I ask why?" The supervisor consulted his data pad, all 4 hands moving in coordination. Request came directly from Ambassador Veritax's office. "Specifically asked for you by name." He looked up, eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Don't know what you did to get noticed, Grant, but word of advice, keep your head down. The Draconis aren't known for their patience with humans." Tyler nodded, hiding his shock. "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." The reassignment proved to be both a blessing and a curse. The work was less physically demanding. Level 3 systems were newer and better maintained than the ancient infrastructure of the lower levels, but the scrutiny was intense. Diplomatic staff expected perfection, and they weren't shy about reporting perceived inadequacies. But Tyler was good at his job, thorough and meticulous, and he quickly adapted to the higher standards. He rarely saw Ambassador Veritax, and never the hatchling, though occasionally he would catch a glimpse of Draconis staff entering or leaving the ambassador's quarters. Weeks passed, and Tyler settled into his new routine. The incident with the hatchling receded further in his memory, overshadowed by the daily challenges of his work. Until one day, nearly 2 months later, when he was called to fix an environmental control issue in one of the diplomatic conference rooms. The room was empty when he arrived, its temperature significantly higher than standard station parameters. Tyler identified the issue quickly, a simple malfunction in the cooling system, and set about making repairs. He was just finishing when the door slid open behind him. "Maintenance is almost complete," Tyler said automatically, turning around. "The system should be back to normal parameters within." He stopped abruptly. Standing in the doorway was Ambassador Veritax, and perched on his shoulder was the hatchling. Though it was noticeably larger now, its wings more developed, its scales gleaming with health. "Ambassador," Tyler said, bowing his head respectfully. "I apologize for the disruption." No apology necessary, Tyler Grant, Veritax replied. Your timing is, in fact, fortuitous. I have been meaning to speak with you. The hatchling made an excited trilling sound upon seeing Tyler, its wings fluttering in what seemed like recognition. To Tyler's surprise, it launched itself from the ambassador's shoulder and glided across the room, landing somewhat awkwardly on the maintenance console beside him. Hello again, Tyler said, unable to help smiling at the creature. You've grown. The hatchling chirped, extending its neck toward him in what Tyler recognized as a request for contact. Hesitantly, he reached out and gently stroked the scales on its head, which were smoother and warmer than he remembered. My offspring has spoken often of you, Veritax said, approaching with measured steps. It remembers your kindness with clarity unusual for one so young. I'm glad it's doing well, Tyler replied, continuing to stroke the hatchling, which had closed its eyes in apparent contentment. It was no trouble, really. On the contrary, the ambassador said, what you did was significant, and I have spent these weeks considering an appropriate response. Tyler tensed slightly. In his experience, when powerful beings spent time considering an appropriate response, it rarely ended well for the less powerful party. Veritax must have sensed his unease, for he made a soft rumbling sound that Tyler had learned was the draconis equivalent of a reassuring chuckle. Fear not, human. My intentions are benevolent. He paused, head tilting in a curiously bird-like gesture. Tell me, are you content with your current position on this station? The question caught Tyler off guard. It's honest work, sir. I'm good at it. That is not what I asked. Tyler hesitated, then decided on honesty. No, Ambassador, I'm not particularly content. I was a mechanical engineer on Earth, with a specialization in hydraulic systems. But humans are still new to the Confederation, and our qualifications aren't recognized. Maintenance work was the best I could get. Veritax nodded, as though this confirmed something he had already suspected. The Confederation can be traditionalist in its views. New species are often required to prove themselves over decades, sometimes centuries, before being fully accepted. The hatchling, seemingly sensing the serious turn in conversation, had settled down on the console, its tail curled around Tyler's wrist in a gesture that felt oddly possessive. However, Veritax continued, there are those of us who see such rigid thinking as counterproductive. Talent and character should be recognized regardless of species or origin. He fixed Tyler with an intense gaze. My offspring believes you possess both in abundance, and I have come to trust its judgment in such matters. Tyler wasn't sure how to respond, so he simply inclined his head in acknowledgement of the compliment. I have a proposition for you, Tyler Grant, the ambassador said. My personal vessel requires a new hydraulic system specialist. The previous one has been promoted to my flagship. The position would include quarters aboard the vessel, diplomatic travel privileges, and a salary commensurate with Confederation standards rather than human ones. Tyler stared at the ambassador in disbelief. Such a position would be a dramatic step up from his current status, essentially elevating him from janitor to a respected technical specialist on a diplomatic vessel, with all the privileges that entailed. That's incredibly generous, Ambassador, Tyler managed. But why me? Surely there are more qualified candidates. Perhaps, Veritax acknowledged, though fewer than you might imagine with your specific expertise. But technical qualifications alone are insufficient for a position in my personal service. He gestured to the hatchling, which was now watching the exchange with keen interest. My offspring's welfare is of paramount importance, and it has formed an attachment to you. Such bonds are rare and not to be dismissed lightly. Tyler looked down at the hatchling, which trilled softly and butted its head against his hand, much as it had done with its parent when he'd returned it. I don't know what to say, Tyler admitted. Say yes, Veritax replied simply, unless you have compelling reasons to remain in your current position. Tyler thought of his tiny quarters, the endless cycles of maintenance work, the subtle discrimination he faced daily as a human on the station. Then he thought of working with advanced systems again, being respected for his skills, traveling aboard a diplomatic vessel, perhaps even visiting other worlds. Yes, he said firmly. I accept, Ambassador. Thank you for the opportunity. Veritax made a gesture that Tyler recognized as satisfaction. Excellent. Report to Docking Bay 7 at the beginning of tomorrow's day cycle. Bring whatever personal possessions you wish to retain. All else will be provided. The hatchling chirped excitedly, wings fluttering, and launched itself back to the ambassador's shoulder. And Tyler Grant, Veritax added, turning to leave. I suggest you refrain from mentioning the specific circumstances of our first meeting to others. For various reasons, that incident has not been recorded in official records, and it would be best if it remained a private matter between us. Tyler nodded, understanding the implication. Whatever had led to the hatchling being in that filtration tank was something the ambassador preferred to keep quiet. Of course, Ambassador. I understand. After Veritax and the hatchling had departed, Tyler stood for a long moment in the empty conference room, trying to process what had just happened. His entire life had changed course in the span of a few minutes, all because he'd happened to hear a splash in a filtration tank 2 months ago. The next morning, Tyler reported to Docking Bay 7 with his few possessions packed in a single duffel bag. His supervisor had been shocked by his resignation, even more so when Tyler mentioned his new position. The news had spread quickly through the maintenance department, generating a mix of disbelief, envy, and in a few cases, genuine congratulations. The ambassador's personal vessel was smaller than Tyler had expected, sleek and elegant rather than imposing. It was clearly designed for speed and maneuverability rather than intimidation. A Draconis attendant met him at the entry ramp, greeting him with formal courtesy and leading him to his assigned quarters. The room was spacious by station standards, with a large viewport offering a stunning view of the docking bay and, beyond it, the starfield. The furnishings were simple but comfortable, adjusted for human physiology rather than Draconis. Ambassador Veritax requests your presence on the command deck once you have settled, the attendant informed him, before withdrawing with a respectful nod. Tyler took a few minutes to unpack his meager possessions, still half expecting to wake up and find this had all been an elaborate dream. But the solid deck beneath his feet and the distant hum of the vessel's engines were reassuringly real. The command deck was located at the forward section of the ship, its curved walls dominated by expansive viewports that currently showed the interior of the docking bay. Ambassador Veritax stood at the center, consulting a holographic display with several other Draconis. The hatchling was nowhere to be seen. Veritax noticed Tyler's arrival immediately and dismissed the others with a gesture. Tyler Grant, he said by way of greeting. You are punctual, a trait I value. Thank you for this opportunity, Ambassador, Tyler replied. I'm eager to begin my duties. Good. Your primary responsibility will be the maintenance and optimization of the vessel's hydraulic systems, which include both conventional and classified technologies. My first officer will provide you with the necessary documentation and security clearances. Veritax paused, studying Tyler with that same penetrating gaze. However, there is another matter I wish to discuss before we depart. Sir, my offspring has entered its first speech development phase, somewhat earlier than is typical for our species. This is an important time, during which language acquisition and cognitive patterning are established. He folded his hands before him, a strangely human gesture. It has expressed a desire for you to participate in this process. Tyler blinked in surprise. Me? But I don't know anything about Draconis development. Precisely, Veritax said. My offspring will be exposed to numerous Draconis influences throughout its life. But its generation will lead during a time of increased interspecies cooperation. Exposure to diverse perspectives during formative periods is considered valuable. He tilted his head slightly. Additionally, it seems to have imprinted on you to some degree during your initial encounter. Such bonds cannot be forced, nor should they be severed without good cause. I'm honored, Tyler said, genuinely moved by the request. But what exactly would this involvement entail? Regular interaction sessions, initially supervised. Teaching basic concepts from a human perspective. Cultural exchange, essentially. Veritax made a dismissive gesture. The specifics can be determined as we proceed. What matters is your willingness. Tyler thought about it for only a moment. I'd be happy to help, Ambassador. Excellent. Veritax turned back to the holographic display. You may begin your technical orientation now. My first officer will escort you to the engineering section. We depart for the Draconis homeworld in 3 standard hours. The homeworld. Tyler had never expected to visit the legendary planet, access to which was strictly controlled for non-Draconis. It seemed the surprises weren't over yet. The ensuing weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Tyler immersed himself in learning the vessel's systems, which were far more advanced than anything he'd worked with on Earth or the station. The hydraulic technology incorporated principles he'd only seen in theoretical papers, requiring him to expand his understanding rapidly. Parallel to his technical duties were the interaction sessions with the Hatchling, which quickly became the highlight of Tyler's days. The young Draconis, whom he learned was called Kirillax, was intensely curious about humans and Earth, peppering Tyler with questions as its speech developed from simple phrases to increasingly complex sentences. Their sessions began in a formal setting, with Veritax or another adult Draconis present, but gradually became more relaxed. Tyler taught Kirillax about human games, music, and customs, while the Hatchling shared aspects of Draconis culture that few outsiders ever witnessed. Why do humans laugh? Kirillax asked one day, during a session in what Tyler had come to think of as the ship's garden, a specialized compartment containing plants from various worlds, maintained for both aesthetic and atmospheric benefits. That's a good question, Tyler replied, considering how to explain something so instinctive. Laughter is a way we express joy, or sometimes relief from tension. It can also be a response to something unexpected or absurd. Kirillax tilted its head, a gesture it had picked up from Tyler. Show me. Tyler smiled and proceeded to tell the Hatchling a simple joke about a human astronaut and an alien discussing the concept of pets. It wasn't particularly sophisticated humor, but when he reached the punchline, Kirillax's eyes widened slightly, and after a moment's processing, it emitted a sound that was unmistakably laughter. A trilling, musical sound quite unlike a human's laugh, but conveying the same emotion. I understand, Kirillax declared, wings fluttering with excitement. The expectation was subverted in an amusing way. Tyler laughed in response, delighted by the Hatchling's insight. Exactly right. You're getting it. Such moments of connection became increasingly common as they traveled. The journey to the Draconis homeworld was not direct. They made several diplomatic stops along the way, giving Tyler the opportunity to see worlds he'd only read about. At each, he continued his dual roles, maintaining the vessel's systems and spending time with Kirillax, whose growth was remarkably rapid. By the time they approached the Draconis system, nearly 2 months after leaving the station, Kirillax had doubled in size. Its wings were now fully functional, allowing it to fly short distances within the confines of the ship. Its scales had developed a deeper, more vibrant hue, and the telepathic abilities characteristic of its species were beginning to manifest. Tyler had grown deeply attached to the young Draconis, finding in their interactions a fulfillment he hadn't known he was missing. For its part, Kirillax seemed equally fond of him, often seeking him out between formal sessions, bringing curious objects or questions for his consideration. It was during their final approach to the homeworld that Ambassador Veritax summoned Tyler to the command deck. The viewport showed a magnificent sight, a vast, ringed planet with swirling clouds of amber and gold, its surface marked by sprawling continents of deep russet and oceans of midnight blue. Tyler Grant, Veritax said, gesturing to the view. Behold Draconis Prime, cradle of my species. It's beautiful, Tyler said honestly, awed by the sight. Few humans had ever seen this world, let alone been invited to its surface. Indeed. Veritax turned to face him directly. We will be remaining here for some time. There are important matters of state requiring my attention, and it is also time for Kirillax to begin formal education at the ancestral creche. Tyler nodded, feeling a twinge of sadness at the thought of seeing less of the Hatchling. I understand, Ambassador. Good. There is something else you should know. Veritax's expression was unreadable, but his tone had shifted slightly. The circumstances of your first meeting with my offspring were not entirely coincidental. Tyler frowned. What do you mean? Kirillax was not accidentally in that filtration tank, Veritax said carefully. It was placed there deliberately. Tyler's eyes widened. By whom? Why would anyone? By me. Veritax interrupted, his voice calm but firm. Tyler stared at the ambassador, unable to process what he was hearing. You put your own offspring in danger? I don't understand. Veritax made a gesture that Tyler had learned indicated something between resignation and respect. I did not endanger Kirillaks. Draconis hatchlings can survive underwater for up to 12 hours, though it is not comfortable for them. I monitored the situation closely and would have intervened had you not appeared when you did. But why? Tyler asked, still struggling to comprehend. It was a test, Veritax said simply. Not of you specifically, but of humanity. Tyler felt a chill run down his spine. A test. The Confederation is at a crossroads, Veritax explained. Some species advocate for continued isolation and caution regarding newer members. Others, including a faction of my own kind, believe in broader cooperation and faster integration. He gestured to the planet growing larger in the viewport. As one of the founding species of the Confederation, the Draconis have significant influence over such policies. Tyler was beginning to understand. So you wanted to see how a human would react to finding a Draconis hatchling in distress. Precisely, Veritax confirmed. I arranged for Kirillaks to be placed where maintenance staff would eventually discover it. The filtration schedule indicated a human would be the first to pass by. That was a huge risk, Tyler said, a hint of accusation in his voice. What if I had just reported it to security? Or ignored it entirely? Then you would have proven right those who believe humans are not ready for greater responsibility in the Confederation, Veritax replied evenly. But you didn't either. You acted with compassion, intelligence, and discretion, qualities that transcend species. Tyler shook his head, still processing the implications. So these past 2 months, my position, the sessions with Kirillaks, all of that was part of your experiment? Initially, yes, Veritax acknowledged. But experiments often yield unexpected results. His voice softened slightly. The bond that has formed between you and my offspring is genuine, as is my appreciation for your skills. What began as a test has evolved into something more significant. Before Tyler could respond, the door to the command deck slid open, and Kirillaks bounded in. The young Draconis had developed a loping, graceful gait that combined the best aspects of bipedal and quadrupedal movement. Tyler, Kirillaks called out, voice bright with excitement. Father, look what I can do. The hatchling held out a clawed hand, concentrating intensely. A small sphere of what appeared to be pure energy formed above its palm, glowing with a soft, blue-white light. It was a rudimentary manifestation of the energy manipulation abilities that adult Draconis were famous for. Very impressive, Kirillaks, Veritax said, pride evident in his tone. That's amazing, Tyler agreed, momentarily setting aside his complicated feelings about Veritax's revelation. He couldn't help but feel proud of Kirillaks's progress, even as he processed the deception that had brought them together. Kirillaks beamed, letting the energy sphere dissipate. The ancestral teachers said I'm developing faster than expected. They say it's because of... The young Draconis broke off, glancing at Veritax, who made a subtle gesture that Tyler couldn't interpret. Because of what? Tyler asked, looking between them. Veritax sighed, a very human sound coming from the imposing alien. Because of your influence, Tyler Grant. The exchange of perspectives has accelerated Kirillaks's cognitive development in unexpected ways. Kirillaks nodded enthusiastically. Human thinking is different. It makes me think differently too. Tyler wasn't sure how to feel about this. On one hand, he was touched that his time with Kirillaks had been beneficial. On the other, he was still grappling with the knowledge that their entire relationship had begun with an elaborate deception. Sensing his discomfort, Kirillaks moved closer, wings slightly drooped. Are you angry, Tyler? Father explained his plan to me recently. I was too young to understand before. Tyler looked at the young Draconis, whose multifaceted eyes reflected genuine concern. Whatever Veritax's motivations, Kirillaks's affection was real, and so was his own. No, I'm not angry with you, Kirillaks, Tyler said gently. I'm just processing. Veritax stepped forward. There is more you should know, Tyler Grant. The test you unknowingly participated in has had consequences beyond this ship. What do you mean? Tyler asked, wariness creeping back into his voice. Your actions have been documented, anonymously, respecting your privacy, and presented to the Confederation Council as evidence supporting accelerated integration for humanity, Veritax explained. Combined with similar examples gathered by allies of various species, it has led to a significant policy shift. Tyler's eyes widened as the implications sank in. What kind of shift? The Council has voted to establish an accelerated species integration program, Veritax said. Earth will be the first beneficiary. Human qualifications will be recognized across Confederation space. Restrictions on human participation in various institutions will be lifted, and a significant technology transfer will begin within the year. Tyler stared at the ambassador, momentarily speechless. The changes Veritax described would transform humanity's position in the galactic community, advancing Earth's integration by decades, perhaps centuries. All because I pulled a hatchling out of a tank, he finally managed. Veritax made that rumbling chuckle. You underestimate the significance of your actions, Tyler Grant. In a universe where many species compete for dominance, compassion without expectation of reward is a powerful indicator of evolutionary maturity. He gestured to Kirillix, who had moved to stand between them. And the bond you formed with my offspring demonstrated humanity's capacity for interspecies connection at a profound level. Kirillix looked up at Tyler, eyes gleaming. I told the Council you were my friend. That humans understand things other species don't. Tyler felt a lump forming in his throat, touched by the young Draconis's faith in him. Thank you, Kirillix, he said softly. There remains one matter to discuss, Veritax said, his tone turning formal. Your future. My future. Tyler echoed. Yes. We will remain on Draconis Prime for at least one standard year, during which Kirillix will undergo intensive training. Your technical expertise is still valuable aboard my vessel, but there is another option to consider. Veritax activated a holographic display, showing what appeared to be an educational institution, a sprawling complex of elegant buildings nestled among towering, alien trees. This is the Interspecies Exchange Academy, the ambassador explained. It was established centuries ago to facilitate understanding between Confederation members, but has traditionally focused on more established species. Under the new integration program, it will accept human students and instructors for the first time. Tyler studied the image, beginning to understand what Veritax was suggesting. The Academy has expressed interest in having you join their technical faculty, Veritax continued. Your experience with both human and Draconis technology makes you uniquely qualified to bridge the knowledge gap. Additionally, you would be able to continue regular interaction with Kirillix, as the ancestral creche is located nearby. It was an extraordinary opportunity to be among the first humans to teach at a prestigious Confederation institution to help shape the future relationship between Earth and the galactic community. But it would also mean a complete departure from the life he had known. This is a lot to consider, Tyler said honestly. Of course, Veritax acknowledged. You have until we reach the surface to decide. Regardless of your choice, your contribution to my offspring's development and to human-Draconis relations will not be forgotten. Later that evening, as the ship entered orbit around Draconis Prime, Tyler stood in his quarters, watching the magnificent planet slowly rotate beneath them. His thoughts were a jumble of emotions and considerations, excitement at the opportunities before him, lingering discomfort at having been an unwitting subject in Veritax's experiment, and a deep attachment to Kirillix that he couldn't have anticipated forming. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Enter, he called out, expecting a crew member with technical questions. Instead, it was Kirillix who stepped into the room, moving with the increasing grace that came with maturation. The young Draconis was now about the size of a large dog, though its proportions were becoming more like an adult's, elongated, elegant, with wings that could almost support sustained flight. Tyler, Kirillix said, sounding uncharacteristically hesitant. May we talk? Of course, Tyler replied, gesturing to a seating area. It had been designed for Draconis physiology, but was comfortable enough for humans. Kirillix settled into position, wings folded neatly against its back. Father told me about the options he presented to you. Yes, Tyler nodded. It's a big decision. I know you might be angry about how we met, Kirillix said, getting straight to the point in the direct manner characteristic of its species. Father's methods are sometimes unconventional, but he truly believes in human potential. Tyler smiled faintly. It's hard to stay angry when the deception led to meeting you. Kiralax's eyes brightened. Then you'll stay? At the academy? I'm still thinking it through, Tyler admitted. It would mean a completely new life. Change can be good, Kiralax said, with a wisdom that belied its age. Before you, I knew only draconis ways of thinking. Now I see more possibilities, more paths. It leaned forward slightly. The academy needs that. Humans need that. My people need that. Tyler was touched by the young draconis's earnestness. You make a compelling case. There's something else, Kiralax said, suddenly looking more serious. Something Father hasn't told you yet. Tyler raised an eyebrow. More secrets? Not exactly. Kiralax seemed to be choosing its words carefully. The bond between us. It's more significant than you might realize. In draconis culture, the first non-parent to form a meaningful connection with a hatchling becomes Kvathan, a kind of mentor guardian. It's a lifelong relationship, traditionally. I didn't know that, Tyler said, surprised by this revelation. Few outsiders do, Kiralax acknowledged. It's one of our older traditions, rarely extended beyond our species. It looked directly at Tyler, multifaceted eyes reflecting the starlight from the viewport. But I have claimed you as Kvathan, and Father has recognized the claim. Tyler felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Kiralax, I'm honored, but I don't know if I understand what that means. It means you'll always have a place among my people, Kiralax explained. Not just as a teacher or technician, but as family. The young draconis extended one wing tip, touching it lightly to Tyler's hand in a gesture of profound respect. The first human to be recognized as Kvathan to a noble draconis. Tyler was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by the significance of what Kiralax was offering. Not just a job or an opportunity, but belonging. A place in a tradition that predated human civilization. You saved me, Kiralax said simply. Not just from water, but from a narrow perspective. You've shown me what humans truly are, beyond the stereotypes. Let us, do the same for your species. Looking into Kiralax's earnest eyes, Tyler knew what his decision would be. From maintenance worker to professor, from outsider to Kvathan. It was a journey he could never have imagined when he heard that splash in a filtration tank. All right, he said, a smile spreading across his face. I'll do it. I'll stay. Kiralax let out a trilling sound of pure joy, wings unfurling in excitement. You won't regret it, Tyler. This is just the beginning of something incredible for both our species. As Tyler watched the young draconis practically dancing around his quarters in celebration, he couldn't help but reflect on the strange, winding path that had brought him here. A simple act of kindness, performed without expectation of reward, had set in motion changes that would affect not just his life, but potentially the course of human history. 2 months ago, he had been a janitor, invisible and unappreciated. Now he was Kvathan to a noble draconis, soon to be a professor at one of the Confederation's most prestigious institutions, and an unwitting catalyst for humanity's accelerated integration into the galactic community. It wasn't the life he had planned for himself, but as he watched Draconis Prime turning majestically beneath them, Tyler Grant couldn't imagine wanting any other. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.